Let me welcome you this afternoon to the latest sponsored webinar as part of the Advancing Intermodal Virtual Education Program about powering the future of AI in trucking. My name is David Garofalo, and I'm the Assistant Vice President for Membership and Marketing here at IANA. And thanks for taking the time out to join us today. I'd like to introduce today's presenters. We have Andrea Thomas with Intel, and we have Trent Richardson from Lenovo, who are going to speak to us today about powering the future of AI in trucking. Andrea, I believe you are first up, so I'm going to go ahead and let you get started.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be talking about how we're powering the future of AI in trucking and transportation. So just an overview of what we'll be looking at today. We'll take a look at the current state of fleet industry and the technologies that are used. We'll take a look at future opportunities and what is actually driving them by looking at business trends, demand trends, technology adoption trends, and also what advanced telematics solutions and the future-facing solutions are looking like. We'll also take a look at fleet market segments, use cases, as well as the ecosystem that helps bring all of these solutions to market. Then we'll be taking a look at the trends in North America. At that point, Trent will be joining and explaining a bit about edge computing, the edge to core portfolio, and Lenovo's OEM and ISV partner program. First, let's take a look at the current state of the fleet and intermodal industry. So the primary industry segments of the intermodal supply chain are cargo containers, cold chain and reefers, which are temperature-controlled transport units, bulk and liquid carriers, and last mile delivery. So in terms of the current application of telematics within this space, there's been an increased penetration of IoT devices. And by that, we mean decentralized point solutions. Now, it's important to take note that those don't typically involve orchestration or analytics. But some of the top applications that are used by these point solutions include driver management by way of driver scorecards and driver safety monitoring, fleet or asset management, which means the monitoring of equipment usage and behavior, tracking and wayfinding. So we've got geolocation tracking and mapping, as well as navigation and route planning. And then also safety and compliance by way of usage or emissions monitoring and emergency shutdown. So overall, what we kind of see globally is that there's been an increased demand for prescriptive automation and analytics. And most recently, that's taken shape in terms of 12% increased demand for vehicle telematics from 2022 to 2023. Now, the fleet industry is currently being transformed by electrification and an interest in autonomy. There's also worldwide population growth, and there's been rising e-commerce demands all over the world. Global transportation management system market size is rapidly growing and is expected to reach $6.6 billion by 2026. And within North America, the commercial vehicle market is expected to grow from $13.8 billion in 2023 to $36.2 billion in 2032. Now, as it relates to technology, there are a lot of factors that are leading to these changes in the industry and the adoption of technology. There's been increased investment in AI that drives the use of applications of that use machine learning, computer vision, et cetera. You've got vehicle electrification and fleet sustainability monitoring, and that requires more intelligence at the edge by way of vehicle sensing platforms, enterprise management systems, and cybersecurity infrastructure. There's also been increased interest in digital twins, which can be used to model supply chains. Now, those require a need for real-time data and connectivity, and they also give you the ability to improve operational efficiency, which is another demand that's definitely influencing the industry a great deal. There's a lot of demand for fleet data exchange. There's been explosive demand in workforce needs. And then there's also been a lot of interest in increased adoption in edge AI and machine vision. So there's been increased presence of large-scale operations and data-driven decision-making that's influencing this adoption. Now, the business trends that drive adoption are pretty common and probably not unfamiliar to people here. So there's, of course, cost. We've seen recently a lot of increases in the cost of labor, fuel, and goods. There's an increased need for better visibility. There's a need for better demand signaling, and there's a desire to integrate customer and supplier systems. There's also a lot of competition. There's increased competition in the last mile delivery space, and there's also a lot of commitments that have been made for fast delivery from a variety of last mile delivery providers. And then also there's a need for better efficiency. Recent years have kind of shown a lot of the points that at which the supply chain has kind of failed or broken down. There's been a lack of end-to-end supply chain visibility, limited view of bottlenecks, such as goods stuck at ports of entry, which of course was in the news a lot the past 2 years, insufficient route planning, so ways to kind of get around these bottlenecks and other bottlenecks once things are transported from port onto trucks or rail, and then also a lack of visibility into inventory availability. So advanced telematic solutions basically wind up being use cases that can be customized and managed from single platform or edge device. So now instead of having a collection of point solutions, you have one device through which you can enable a variety of solutions and use cases. Now, these advanced solutions are able to aggregate and inference complex AI and machine learning workloads and various data types. You also have advanced aftermarket solutions that can be applied to fleets with diverse vehicles. So you don't have to have just one type of vehicle in order to be able to make use of these use cases when you have a single edge device. Now, through a powerful ruggedized onboard computer, you can handle multiple complex workloads and capture data for near real-time or future decision-making. So that includes a variety of data types that include video, temperature, vibration, vehicle analytics, telematics, and more. How exactly would you deploy this, and what does the ecosystem look like? So AI and machine learning-driven solutions do need a various players to enable the deployment of the end-to-end solution. Now that looks like the participation, or can include the participation of network and specialized component providers, ODMs and OEMs, ISVs, software vendors, and system integrators, and then fleet owners and freight carriers and 3PLs. So they all come together and work together in order to deploy these solutions at the end. You must provide connectivity, cloud, and software, even in remote or rugged environments. This includes the compute at the edge, and then alerts for drivers, operators, and data that can be sent back to command centers, warehouses, etc. However, as much as this might seem rather complicated, there's a lot of collaboration that goes on between the industry players that actually allows for more rapid deployment and facilitates the process. Now, taking a look at North American intermodal shipping opportunities, the overall trends and growth areas involve recent supply chain challenges that expose vulnerabilities that have to be addressed. There's a need for strategic fleet management in order to improve visibility and deployment. There's also a need for real-time situational awareness and predictive decision-making. And optimized supply chain orchestration can be used to help avoid backlogs. We're seeing increased adoption of integrated AI transportation systems, and then real-time cooperation and planning between the various parts of the ecosystem and supply chain. Now, within North America in particular, there have been increased regulations that motivate investments in new technologies. There's been a push and a lot of interest towards autonomous operations. There have been environmental impact goals, both at the state and in some cases national levels. There's been Canadian fleet transformation, and also, the increased demand for telematics applications. Now, there are 19 jurisdictions in the US and Canada that have signed pledges to expand electrification of medium and heavy duty trucks by 2030. So that's 30% of sales. And then there's a number of vehicles shipped in North America is expected to grow from 5.3 million in 2023 to 13 million in 2032. What role does Intel play? What does Intel offer? Well, we allow you to have increased intelligence at the edge that can be added to new and existing vehicles. Intel-powered solutions on the edge roadmap cover major fleet use cases and subsegments, optimized for Intel CPUs, GPUs, and XPUs. Now, through workload consolidation, you can combine sensor capture for AI, machine learning, and data analytics. And this enables development of solutions to address top customer concerns. There are scalable solutions that can accelerate deployment of intelligent devices. You're also able to have, again, through this central device, better security because multiple devices have been replaced by a single Intel-powered edge device. You're able to unite disparate solutions, processes, and functions onto a single ruggedized in-vehicle computer. You're also able to simplify using things like containerized analytics platforms that lower the time to market and help you customize and adopt solutions much more quickly. You can take a modular approach that supports multiple systems and vehicle types, so you don't have to worry about trying to manage interoperability on your own, since you have a single device that can be connected to a variety of sensors, and then that also can be enabled using a single software platform. You can accommodate a range of use cases that can be customized or expanded in the future to meet new requirements. And then you have reduced labor and maintenance because of this single platform access. So just taking a look at some of the high-level solutions, as I mentioned before, you have within the intermodal space, things like cargo monitoring, cold chain management, and cargo optimization. And then across not just the intermodal space, but with other types of vehicles, you can also add in things like fleet and location tracking, route planning, data collection and analytics, predictive maintenance, fuel management, worker safety and monitoring, theft prevention, near real-time alerts, integrated in-cab communications, and asset tracking. And this just is a look at the various silicon types that we have that are able to handle some of the workloads and use cases and concerns, address the concerns that I mentioned. So as I said before, you're able to capture sensor data from a variety of sensors and cameras, and you're able to leverage edge compute to aggregate the sensor data to perform a variety of tasks. And this can be handled through, again, all of the software, all of the customized silicon platforms that we have that can perform in extreme conditions, extended temperature, vibration, and are ruggedized as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Trent. He'll give you an idea of the way that Lenovo helps enable solutions at the edge. And don't forget to post your questions.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I appreciate your continued partnership between Intel and Lenovo. And this is a very fruitful space for both of us. So I want to highlight here on this slide, number one, I'll be at the IANA meeting in September, and I'll be at booth 1023, so 1023, with the Lenovo OEM team. So please come by and see me if there's any additional questions or thoughts that you have after this meeting, or post those questions here in this meeting. We'll leave some time at the end. Having said that, wanted to cover a bit before we get into our portfolio, kind of the trends we're seeing in AI and AI at the edge in particular, which is my area of expertise. So, you've got the data explosion that's going on, right? And just in the 6 years between 2019 and 2025, going from 33 zettabytes to the projected 175 zettabytes of information that'll be out there. That information will be collected closer to the edge, and we'll define edge in the next slide or two to kind of give you the perspective around it that we frame as we went to design our product set and address the market needs. So the market, a lot of that data is being collected at the edge, but a lot of it is then sent to the cloud or stored, but not dealt with closer to the data. And those decisions at the edge can save you money, can save your company reputation. Being able to act quickly on that is becoming more and more strategic, and a lot of your peers are looking into this. So it becomes part of the strategy, your defensive strategy for your organizations to ensure that you embrace it and understand it at a minimum. So the adoption of enterprise AI is definitely on the climb. Of edge AI, the 28% of all the AI hardware out there is projected to be at the edge. So more than 25% of all the data that's being acted on is going to be at the edge. So we're needing more compute power at the edge, and we're needing different form factors, different features to help address that. The transportation industry certainly poses some challenges, everything from how you power it on a vehicle, the DC power, to the types of connectivity, to the capabilities, right? And then Intel is providing some great integrated graphics and even their PCIe graphics line to provide the sort of ramped up AI power as your needs progress. It's a very fragmented ecosystem. There are a lot of ISVs out there. So when we got into this space a few years back, that was part of the challenge, right? Everybody's got a hot and sexy solution, but some of the organizations, didn't really have any sales force behind them or didn't have great abilities to sort of scale that. So, we've chosen our partners in the ISV space, and we're always open to additional partnerships. But we have a group that goes through all the AI partnerships and really confirms what's behind them, make sure that they're on the right growth trajectory, make sure that their sales pipeline is healthy, as is ours, and we're mutually coming to the table with the right things to make the partnership worthwhile. So, having said that, when you come to Intel and Lenovo in our edge AI space, we have a pre-vetted group of ISVs that we've worked with, have great relationships with, have tested on our hardware, both in-house and with them. We have a program where we give them the hardware as well. So it's a much better handshake. Everything from what are the BIOS settings, or how does deployment work, or has this workload been tested on this device with this ISV? So those are questions that can get answered much more quickly, and we can put a team of experts on very quickly. So we're here to help you accelerate that journey and those discussions. So I wanted to cover a little bit about what is edge computing. In general, we describe it as computing outside the data center. So what don't you have when you're outside the data center? You don't have locked doors, you don't have security. The temperatures can vary. It's not a fixed cool temperature that's static day in, day out. It's not hundreds, if not thousands of systems under one roof where you can rack and stack and run down the line and deploy. These are very distributed. Edge computing is very distributed environments in general. So you might have hundreds of stores across the nation or across the globe, or in the transportation industry case, hundreds or thousands of vehicles that are highly distributed and constantly in use. So those are challenges that we set out to help circumvent with features and some of the ecosphere that we put around our Lenovo ThinkEdge line of products to help deploy and manage these devices more quickly, to reduce your proof of concept timing, to reduce deployment timing, et cetera. Here again are some of the facets that helped shape the product set that Lenovo ThinkEdge has become. Your environmentals, right? As I mentioned, you're not inside a data center. You've got very wide temperatures that are, you might have a warehouse in the far north, from a North American perspective, Canada or the high Midwest, and then all the way down to Florida, right? And your temperature range is going to vary greatly, especially if it's on a moving vehicle that goes between those areas. So the product set was designed for, the far edge client side devices have typically a minus 20 degrees Celsius to positive 60 degrees Celsius temperature range. Some of the others that have a little more compute capability are in the 0 to 50 range. And then the servers have a little bit narrower range, but are still wide range compared to normal servers that go in a data center. So wide temperature range is a focus on the product set. Shock and vibration testing, dust filtering, fanless capabilities on the client side, low acoustics. On a fanless device, not such a big deal. On a fan device, these devices aren't, again, sitting in a data center where they can scream and be loud. A lot of times they are in a warehouse or in an office in a warehouse or in a retail environment. So different acoustic settings to kind of reduce those noises from the fans. IP protection. I'll talk about a few of our products on the server side where we have accelerometers built into them. So where if you opt in on this version and this setting, and then you encrypt the drives, if you were to go remove that device from a wall and someone tries to steal it, it's going to immediately encrypt the drives, and there's nothing that they can get on the device, right? So instead of a front page on the newspaper and a privacy concerns, you might have a $5,000 incident or a $2,000 incident, depending on the cost of the device. So security, because you're not in a data center, is very important. On-site authentication, that's part of what I mentioned, or what I'll allude to here. If we were to, and we'll get into this a little bit on a later slide where we talk about a deployment tool that we have called Lenovo Open Cloud Automation, or LOCA as we call it. But there's a key that you can use to authenticate who is the person who's deploying this device at that location, and only they can log into it and access it and then pull down the deployment information. So it's validated deployment at the site, right? As we mentioned, this is often a distributed environment, so you may not have technical people on site where you're deploying these. So that can come straight from manufacturing to a remote facility, someone who you deem capable of plugging in an Ethernet cord and plugging in a device to power, and authenticating at that end, can then do those parts. So what we call near zero touch deployment, or NZTP. So that makes it so that someone doesn't have to travel to each site with a USB key to boot up a WIM or an ISO and get the image going. You can update BIOS, you can update firmware, you can load the OS, you can load applications, all through some of the tools that we have with our system, like Loca, and xClarity would be your steady state management tool set that goes across our portfolio. So continuity and moving forward, automating deployment and lifecycle management, again, is part of that xClarity tool. So we'll move forward. Without further ado, I lift the curtains, and this is the Lenovo ThinkEdge portfolio. You have on the left side here your devices that are closer to the edge, like what they call the far edge. So these are devices that are closer to the data, where the data is occurring, right? These need to be more hardy devices with a hardier temperature range, typically fanless. There's quite often particulate material in the air, as well as dust, and these things reduce the life cycle and cause higher maintenance frequency to clear out dust, things like that when you have fans in some of these areas, like warehouses or on vehicle, or you name it, at a dock. So again, wide temperature ranges. Also, highly efficient CPUs. So your Atom class, your Celeron, your i3, and as you range into that middle tier, you're getting more in towards your i3, your i5, i7 type devices from Intel. And that's where you're, as opposed to data collection, as you get into these more Core I specific devices, you're still having those wide temperature ranges on some of them. You've got more connectivity options. You've got the ability to do data orchestration. So you can actually run some workloads against these, some AI workloads, still in your fanless devices, still with, for instance, the SE50, the example towards the middle right there, to have DC power to run on a vehicle, to have additional Ethernet ports. You can have a dual port or quad port Intel Ethernet card added on in a PCIe slot. You can have machine interfaces with DIDO type connections, serial ports. But those integrated graphics of those higher end Core I systems have some decent AI capability. They have execution units on board in the chipset, and using Intel OpenVINO toolkit, you can actually do some good AI on these. Some examples there would be, I know one of our customers was doing rail line visual inspection as they went along. So they needed wide temperature because it's going to expose the elements. They have a camera connected to it, and they're running visual inferencing, against integrated graphics. So a lot of folks don't know that that's possible. They think it requires a discrete graphics card. All of that depends on how many models, how many cameras. You can scale down to some very functional, very efficient, inferencing on these Core I devices, and have those, wide temperature ranges, the fanless nature of it, et cetera. As you shift into the right-hand side of the column here, you get into our edge server. These, again, are all part of our ThinkEdge portfolio. And again, all those environmentals and items that I had on the last slide that sort of described there are design strategies that went into the portfolio still apply here. What you get starting with this SE350 device is a base management controller, a BMC. So that gives you your out-of-band management, right? Sort of your you plug in a management Ethernet port, and you can turn this thing on from bare metal and deploy BIOS, firmware, operating system, applications, everything. So a lot of power here. And while it's hard to tell the scale by looking at these images, these devices are very small. I can hold them in, they're larger than the palm of my hand, but I can hold one easily out in front of me, and they're, this wide, that long. So for instance, the SE350 V1 has the ability to put a PCIe, it has a PCIe slot, so a graphics card, wireless capabilities, more storage options than you have in the other class. So a lot more selection options for connectivity and Ethernet, higher speed Ethernet. As we get into our newly launched devices, and there's a reason there's a pinkish square around these two devices, they actually share a motherboard or a planar, depending on the terminology you like to use. So shared planar, but one device, the one on the left, the 350 V2, again, this branched out from the 350, the highly successful SE350 V1 on the left. The 350 V2 has an option for internal or external power supplies. Again, why we would have external power supplies on a device like this is to shrink the footprint, to make it as small as possible to fit into different environments, right? But some people wanted to have internal power supplies and make it a cleaner install. We have that option as well. In order to do that, we had to get rid of the PCIe slot on the V2. So therefore, we wanted to still have that because there's a great need for that in the size and form factor. So the 2U SE360 V2 still has PCIe slots and actually more GPU capability than the 350 V1. And so these are really powerful devices. Staging up from that, and these run the Intel Xeon D processors. And the next step up is the SE450, and that runs our Xeon SP scalable processor. And again, this is has more power supply behind it, the ability to put more GPUs, up to 4 GPUs, depending on the height and width of the ones you're using. So as you can see, the power and capabilities scale up as you go to the right. So why would you need one of these devices on the right-hand side if you can do some AI inferencing and you're getting more ruggedness off to the left side? Well, a lot of your devices on the left can be consolidated into a single edge server. So you can actually run a hypervisor on these systems and containerize workloads, your modern applications and containers in your Kubernetes environment. So a lot of devices that may be on the left side running a single instance of Linux or Win 10 IoT, Win 11 IoT, and a single application installed on that as an executable, right? You can shift that and have multiple applications running virtualized on these devices as you go up the stack. And in some cases, we also have hypervisors that are validated on our left side of the portfolio as well. So you can consolidate workloads there. We're seeing demand grow for having high availability. So for instance, a cluster of 3 devices on this left side or right side of the portfolio. And that way you get your high availability. You can down one of the devices, update BIOS, firmware, whatever the case is, and bring it back up into the cluster, down another one. So you're seeing customers who are consolidating applications and workloads onto a cluster of devices. And again, that would be more so for a warehouse in the transportation industry sense, from in a warehouse or somewhere land-based, right? You could do this on a mobile system as well. But we're seeing more of the single device solutions still being in demand on the mobile transportation solutions that are out there. So I think that's about it that I wanted to touch on here. Again, any other questions on that, happy to answer in the Q&A session or at booth 1023 at the show coming up September 11th. This is the tool set that I alluded to. So this is the xClarity tool. This gives you single pane of glass visibility to every device that I just showed you in the portfolio. The devices on the left, as I mentioned, did not have that base management controller, the BMC chip, partially because in the competitive cost area of the devices on the left, a BMC would add enough cost that it puts you at probably a competitive disadvantage, but it is something to look at in the future. The devices on the right do have that BMC, so they would be able to do out-of-band deployment from bare metal. The devices on the left, you would have to install an agent to run the xClarity, but you do get single tool set across the whole portfolio to manage it, to update firmware, real-time monitoring and events. So single place to go to see all the devices in the portfolios is a powerful tool set in the edge space. The other tool set that I mentioned was the Lenovo Open Cloud Automation tool, or LOCA. And this is in relation to deployment, right? So, your problem statement going from left to right and then down lower left to lower right. Typical deployment in today's day and age, if you're not doing it remotely, you're getting devices sent from manufacturing to a staging or your corporate headquarters, where your IT team is unboxing, connecting it, doing a Pixie boot or USB key or whatever your current strategy is. Some folks may be using some of the cloud-based deployment, and that's great too. But what we're providing here is the ability to, at least on the server side of the portfolio, through that BMC, do remote deployment of BIOS, firmware, operating system, applications, and it doesn't require. So number one, you can ship straight from distribution to manufacturing to your remote areas. Again, I mentioned this is edge computing is a distributed environment. So you have many different offices around with few devices. And that presents a problem when you go to deploy of more shipping to these areas, more images or security policies, things like that for all these different facilities, different places you're sending the hardware to. So Loca is designed to reduce that time and to really bring value to the portfolio and save you time staging that deployment piece. So our Lenovo OEM program is a program designed where our devices typically get brought into other solutions, right? If someone who's got an end product of their own, incorporating our device as part of their product. It's expanded significantly in the last 5 to 8 years. Some of the facets of the OEM program, we took a lot of devices in our portfolio, extended their life cycle, because as we know, when you guys are developing solutions to run in your environment, quite often those proof of concepts take months. I hate to say years, but I've seen it take years. They just take way too long, right? So some of our tool sets we're hoping will reduce those timeframes. And also the AI program where we have pre-identified and validated solutions for you. We're hoping to reduce some of those proof of concept and testing periods. We also offer global warranties and premier support services against the products that are in the OEM portfolio. The ThinkEdge devices are in the OEM portfolio. We also identify key ISVs as part of our, and I'll get to a slide on that, but it's our Crosswave portfolio, our Crosswave program, which identifies ISVs on our client-side devices, much like our AI program does on the server side. You also get dedicated OEM salespeople who understand that any change in a component, shifting from one brand of graphics card to another, or one brand of NIC card, or that chipset on the motherboard, makes a huge difference to your very distributed and driver-specific deployment, right? So those are things that are identified and spoken about far in advance, right? And we're looking at, we try and not defeature a device without a transition device that provides that same or better functionality. So it puts you on sort of a path of continuity that is much more comforting when you have a solution that has taken a lot of time to bake. So we have Lenovo OEM representatives at our booth, and feel free to come talk to those folks to get more information about that program. Again, I mentioned the Crosswave program, and these are some of the ISVs identified, and then our AI Innovators program as well. And so we can certainly talk more about that as we engage more, hopefully, during the show and afterwards. So without further ado, that was all I had. I'm happy to answer any questions that the audience may have, as well as Andrea.
I haven't received any questions, but from the audience, but I do have a question, if you don't mind. I want to go back, and I want to talk a little bit more and see if both of you could comment a little bit more about what benefits, and I know this is a very kind of esoteric question because you're never going to be able to give all the variables, but what is it exactly that either a fleet owner or someone who's looking to implement this solution, what will they gain? What is their business ROI by implementing a system through Intel and Lenovo like this?
I'll take a stab at that one. Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, so in terms of the ROI, one of the things that you get from a lot of the visibility and information that is provided through these systems is the ability to kind of save yourself from basically the unexpected. So for example, if you have a predictive maintenance system that more or less can give you information on your entire fleet, you avoid driving a vehicle until it's broken down, at which point the repair cost would be a lot more substantial. If you're looking at the conditions of the goods that you're shipping, whether that's the actual status, as it relates to the temperature or whether or not things get damaged in shipment, again, you're given a lot of visibility that helps prevent some of the loss that you might otherwise incur if things are somehow mishandled or somehow find themselves in conditions that actually, require that the goods be discarded. That's especially critical in things that involve, cold chain, right? That could be medication, that could be food, but, losing track of that kind of information can result in losing an entire shipment. you also get a lot of great information that can help reduce liability or protect you from claims as it relates to both being able to monitor the status of vehicles, but also as you're moving down the road, being able to keep track of events that might result in insurance claims. So if you have an event recording system, if there is actually an accident, you can establish better who was actually at fault. And so you find that you can limit your liability claims when you have that record of what's happening. But those are some of the ways that you can really see a pretty rapid ROI through the implementation of some of these technology solutions.
Thanks, Andrea. That was very helpful. I appreciate that. Trent, did you have anything you wanted to add?
That was pretty comprehensive. I think that's pretty good.
So just as a follow-up question too, what do you find is a typical kind of time frame or process for implementing these technologies from your side, from kind of initial kind of review to actual implementation?
I guess I'll take a stab. That really depends on the team at hand. We have customers who come to us and are bleeding edge, and they've got heavy development teams internally. They're testing 3 or 4 things before they jump on one. Then we've got customers who get excited, they see something that's good enough, and they just lean into it, but they don't have the staff on board, right? So they need some services add to that, and so you have to build the services scope and who's going to do what pieces. So it really depends on the project, but in general, 6 months, 4 months. If things are aggressive, I hate to say it goes longer. I've seen them go longer. And again, some of the tool sets that we provide and our partnership with customer or partners like Intel certainly helps accelerate that, right? When customers have these issues, we have weekly meetings with a lot of these ISVs and these strategic partners, so we can get to the bottom of these questions quickly. And we've got sales engineers who can jump in, who are regionally based and segment based. So they're experts in their areas and can help with those solutions and platform issues as well. So depends on the customer's team at hand. Also, we've seen customers who just want it turnkey and they just want to turn it over to a big shop who can do it all for them, right? And that's going to be expensive, but certainly you can accelerate things by doing that.
So I'm sorry to keep peppering you with questions, but if there's such an explosive growth in AI, kind of not only in kind of the business settings, but also in personal settings. What do you think are going to be the largest impacts initially in this first wave of AI that's going to really make a difference in how people conduct their business today?
I guess the speed at which decisions are made, and it's going to be less human intervention. You're building if-then statements. For instance, let's take camera inferencing. If the camera identifies an anomaly that you have trained it to look for, then do this, whether that's notify management, whether that's shut down the line, whether that's light up a dashboard light. Things are going to be much more quick to be resolved, and also issues be identified. And as Andrea was alluding to, if it's preventative maintenance, it's you're going to have less impacts in some cases of downtime. So having sensors and cameras that can detect devices or bearings or things that are heating up, right? Those failures should occur much less, and so you'll have just more continuity of business without human intervention, which will be interesting.
So I think a lot of it too is just the power of information. So as opposed to being reactionary and tactical, you can be a lot more strategic. Mm-hmm. If I get a lot of information about where maybe particular bottlenecks are coming up or where other issues are arising in my supply chain, I can really analyze that data at the back end, and I can use it to get ahead of the problems as opposed to responding to the problems. So, the way that I see AI is really in terms of enhancing what humans already do. Not so much a replacement, but in terms of, because the information that really ultimately goes in there is information and insight that comes from people. But I think that, again, it means that people can make informed decisions with a plethora of data that really backs it up. And then, and then they can additionally track that and really statistically see how the information and the choices that they make have been enhanced because of all this additional data that they now have before they make these decisions.
And I'm so glad to know that it's value add versus value replace. Since so much of AI, that's the great debate is it going to replace people, or is it just going to augment and make people better at what they do? So that's a great response. Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate it. Having no other questions, I am going to say thank you very much to the both of you. I appreciate your time today. Great presentation, really fascinating topic. And again, if you didn't ask any questions today, but you do have some come up, don't forget that Trent and his team will be at Intermodal Expo. Registration is still open. You can still join us in Long Beach, September 11 to 13, and see Trent and ask all of your questions. So thank you all very much for taking the time today to join us. If you need anything, please email us at info@intermodal.org or visit our website at intermodal.org. Thank you so very much, and we'll see you soon.